seated. Thank you, Dunedin High School Honor Guard. Thank you very much for bringing the flags and for that medley. Good evening, everyone. My name is Vince Gizzi, Parks and Recreation Director for the City of Dunedin. On behalf of the city, it is my honor and pleasure to welcome all of you to our Purple Heart Recognition Day. I would especially like to welcome all of our veterans and military organizations here today. America is strong and great because of you. This is our 12th anniversary of this recognition here in Dunedin at our beautiful Purple Heart Park on the corner of Broadway and Main Street. Just to show our hands, how many have been to this event at least 10 times out of the 12 years? 11 times? And 12. Pat in the DAVA, thank you, DAV. Just a little history. In 2006, the city of Dunedin was named a Purple Heart City by the Military Order of the Purple Heart, first in the state of Florida. We celebrated the occasion on the National Day of Recognition on August 7, 2007, by planting a tree at Dunedin Veterans Memorial Park next to the VFW Post 2550. A proclamation was read, and the city further pledged to dedicate our own Purple Heart Monument on August 7th, 2008. Again, we celebrate the 12th anniversary of the Dunedin Purple Heart Monument and Park and are here in recognition of all of our nation's Purple Heart recipients. Now I would like to invite up to the podium Father Bob Schwick, Captain United States Marine Corps, retired, for the invocation, followed by the posting of the colors by the Dunedin High School JRROTC. Father Bob.
Before we begin our invocation, I ask that we all bow our heads for a moment of silent prayer on behalf of all the victims of these mass killings that have been taking place here these past few days, and also for their families, friends, loved ones. May God watch over them all. Lord God, Father of us all, we come together here to celebrate the National Day of Recognition of the Military Order of the Purple Heart. We give thanks. We are so blessed to be here in freedom, without fear or of having to render favor to another. Today we recognize the sacrifices of those who carried the burden of protecting our freedom, with all giving some and some giving all. Their unselfish actions leaving us with a poverty of words, but an abundance of love and appreciation. We also recognize the family members, the unsung heroes, our moms, our wives, sisters, and brothers who carried our burden without complaint and helped soothe the physical and mental wounds we incurred. This unity of faith, family, and friends has become the underpinning of our love for our country. And we pray to you, Heavenly Father, to give us the strength to heal all wounds, not so much of self, but of injuries resulting in loss of love of you through erosion of our love for one another. Help us to restore love so that the sacrifice made are not in vain. For we ask all this, Almighty God, in your holy name. Amen. I'd like to call up the commander of the American Legion here, Sid Dangriff, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Color Guard, would you please post the colors? Two. Now, if you'll put your hands over your hearts, gentlemen, you can salute if you'd like, and follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Two. Please remain standing for the singing of the national anthem by Chip Shields. Chip.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Please be seated. Thank you, Father Bob, Sid, and Chip. Thank you. Now I'd like to invite up to the podium Kim Allison, representing the American Gold Star Mothers, Inc. of Tampa, to read the Soldier's Battle Prayer. Kim?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kim Allison. I am the proud Gold Star mom of Zachary Shannon, Special Zachary Shannon, who was killed in Afghanistan March 11th, 2013. I'm also the proud Blue Star mom of Private Joseph Mirioni, Sergeant Stephen Shannon, U.S. Army, and Chief Petty Officer Robert Mirioni, who is currently deployed. This is from Psalm 23:4. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will feel no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And a favorite prayer of mine, the prayer for soldiers. Brave warriors, should fate find us in battle, may our cause be just. May our leaders have clear vision, may our courage not falter. May we be triumphant and earn victory as we show mercy to our enemies. May our efforts bring lasting peace. May our sacrifice be always appreciated by those we serve. May we return to our loved ones unharmed. Should we be harmed, may our wounds heal. Should we perish in the struggle, may God embrace us and find for us a place in his kingdom. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Now, before we continue on with the program, I just have a few recognitions. Doug Hutchins, our Deputy City Manager. Doug is here with us this evening. Kyle Johnson, the principal of Dunedin High School, and James Fasinelli with the junior ROTC is here this evening. And also our city attorney, Tom Trask, is with us. Tom, thanks for being here. We have one more guest of honor that I'd like to recognize this evening, and his name is Master Sergeant Ralph Sanchez. So if you could stand, Mr. Sanchez. Ralph served in the Korean and Vietnam Wars, 4 Purple Hearts. Original Green Beret, 1 Silver Star, 1 Distinguished Service of Medal, 1 Korean Medal of Honor, and 1 Combat Infantry Cross of Valor. Thank you so much for your services. Thank you. It is now my pleasure to introduce the Honorable Vice Mayor of the City of Dunedin, Maureen Mofrini, who will introduce our City Commission and special guests. Commissioner, or Vice Mayor.
Good evening. First, I just wanted to say how proud I am to be here tonight and to be able to speak to you. I only get that honor because our mayor is currently in Scotland with our city manager, and they are representing the city at our sister city, Stirling, Scotland. So they are representing us well, and so they've trusted us to carry on. So we'll do our best. I first want to have us give a big round of applause again for all the veterans here. I would be remiss if I didn't say that my own father was a proud Air Force man from World War II, and he's passed now, but the veterans always have a great place in our hearts family. We're here today to honor Purple Heart Day, and for those of you who don't know, the Order of the Purple Heart happens to be the oldest American military decoration for merit. It is awarded to members of the U.S. Armed Forces who have been killed or wounded in action against an enemy, or to our soldiers who had suffered maltreatment as prisoners of war. Those recipients are the soldiers who have given the greatest sacrifices for us as individuals and as a country. And their commitment to our country deserves our passion and our respect. So would those of you who are Purple Heart recipients or family members honoring those recipients, please stand if you're able so that we may give you a big round of applause. Thank you for your service. What an appropriate setting for this celebration, Dunedin's very own Purple Heart Park. This celebration started with one man, Danny Souter, who approached our former mayor, Dave Eggers, and said, "We need to honor our own." City officials and local veterans organizations said, "How can we help?" And then the Kokalakis family stepped in and donated this beautiful and very visible location to bestow the honor of Florida's first Purple Heart city. I want to thank all who worked so hard to make this park and this celebration a reality. Now, if I may, I'd like to invite our entire commission up to read our 2019 Purple Heart Proclamation. If you can allow me to introduce Commissioners Deborah Kynes, Heather Gracie, and Jeff Gow. And I'd also like to invite Mr. Mal Klingen, Mr. Mark Brill, and Father Bob Swick from the Military Order of the Purple Heart, JFK, Chapter 1963, to accept our proclamation.
Purple Heart Recognition Day. Whereas August 7, 2019 marks the 237th anniversary of the inception of the Purple Heart Award, and the 87th anniversary of the Military Order of the Purple Heart. And whereas August 7th has been officially designated as National Purple Heart Recognition Day, in honor of those American veterans who've earned the military tribute by virtue of their bravery and sacrifice. And whereas the Purple Heart is specifically awarded to any member of the United States Armed Forces that's been wounded or killed in combat with a declared enemy of the United States.
And whereas throughout history, brave and patriotic individuals have answered the call of duty and nobly engaged in the fight to eliminate the oppressive forces of tyranny and that have threatened our freedom. And whereas on this 12th anniversary of the city of Dunedin being congressionally recognized as a Purple Heart city, the city will commemorate the sacrifices of our nation's men and women in uniform at a ceremony in Purple Heart Park at the corner of Main Street and Broadway at 6:30 p.m. on Wednesday, August 7th, 2019.
Now, therefore, I, Deborah Kynes, by virtue of the authority vested in the entire commission by our mayor, do proudly proclaim Wednesday, August 7th, 2019, as Purple Heart Recognition Day in Dunedin, and ask that we pause to remember those extraordinary men and women and their families who made the ultimate sacrifice to preserve our freedom, and to those who were willing to make that ultimate sacrifice and to pray for the safety of all those now defending our nation. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. And if the gentleman can stay up here, our Purple Heart. Also wanted to acknowledge one of the original individuals that worked hard towards establishing this very park, former Mayor and current Pinellas County Commissioner Dave Eggers. Commissioner Eggers has a great passion for veterans, as many of you know. He is out of town, therefore unable to attend, but his heart is with us. He called me probably 4 times to make sure I sent the message to all of you that he wishes he could be here, but he is here in spirit. I think one of the neatest things about our county is that we have such a great relationship, Dunedin and the Pinellas County Commission. And the Pinellas County government has also become, our community has become a Purple Heart County. So I'm happy to say that through the efforts of Dave and all the county commissioners, Pinellas County is now a Purple Heart County. We are honored to have them represented here today. So I'd like to invite the chair of the County Commission, and always a great champion for veterans and for Dunedin, Commissioner Karen Seal, to the podium to read the proclamation from the Pinellas County government.
Well, it is my distinct pleasure and privilege to be here with you all tonight. And it's so wonderful that this is the first city in Pinellas County that established the Purple Star. We unveiled earlier today in the War Veterans Park down near Bay Pines a similar stone such as this. And I think what it says is so important. My stone is red for the blood they shed. The medal I bear is my country's way to show they care. If I could be seen by all mankind, maybe peace will come in my lifetime. And I think particularly with everything that's going on in the United States and the tragedies that we've recently endured, this really sends such an important message and says it all. So with that, I have a proclamation from the county to recognize how wonderful Dunedin is and how special our veterans and their families are. Whereas Purple Heart is the oldest military decoration still in present use and was initially created by George Washington in 1782 as the badge of military merit. And whereas the Purple Heart was the first American Service Award made available to the common soldier and is awarded to any member of the United States Armed Services wounded or killed in combat with a declared enemy of the United States. And whereas the mission of the Military Order of the Purple Heart, chartered by an act of Congress, is to foster an environment of goodwill towards the combat wounded veteran members and their families, to promote patriotism, to support related legislative initiatives, and most importantly, to make sure we never forget the sacrifices made by those so decorated. And whereas there have been many Pinellas County residents who have made the ultimate sacrifice in giving their lives in the cause of freedom, and there are numerous combat wounded veterans who currently reside in the county, and as Purple Heart awardees contribute to their community in countless ways. And whereas the city of Dunedin became Florida's first Purple Heart city on August 3rd, 2006, and continues efforts to recognize veterans every day at every level. So now there it be proclaimed by the Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners that August 7th, 2019 be recognized as Purple Heart Day in both Pinellas County as well as Dunedin. Thank you very much.
Before we continue, I did want to take a moment just to introduce other dignitaries that are here. I've got the list of those that were most likely going to be here, so if I call their name and you don't see them, then maybe they, for whatever reason, didn't make it. I would start out by introducing our flag man over here from Gus Bilirakis's, Congressman Gus Bilirakis's office, Rob Flees. He said United States Army. Senator Ed Hooper and his wife Lee. Not sure if they got here. Okay. Representative Chris Sprowls or his representative Anna Stearns. Okay. And of course, we already had Karen Seal, Chair of Pinellas County Commission. Charlie Justice, Pinellas County Commission. Okay. See here. Wanda Dudley, Kenneth City Mayor. Christy Mackey, U.S. Department of Homeland Security, U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary. And I also noticed that former Commissioner John Tornga was here, so I wanted to recognize him as well. I know he's the Marine, so. And thank you for allowing me to be part of this. I'm so happy everyone's here. I think Commissioner Sill said it very well. It puts us in perspective with everything that's going on in the United States to take a minute and think about the greatest sacrifices that have been given. Right now, it's my extreme pleasure to introduce Scott Daniels, who was an original committee member, and also Scott's father was a Purple Heart recipient. Scott? Oh, you're right there.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Maureen. I have the distinct pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker this evening. His name is Sergeant Luke Ryan. He's a former team leader with the 75th Army Ranger Regiment, and he served 4 deployments in Afghanistan. I'd like to introduce our speakers and give you a piece of their family experience. So I want to let you know that Luke was born in Michigan, and we have a lot of Michiganders, of course, here in Florida and certainly here in Pinellas County. And he was born to Dr. and Mrs. Mitch and Carol Ryan. And I want to tell you about this man. He has lived and served in Arkansas, California, Florida, Georgia, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Thailand, and he now lives in Johnson City, New York State. Luke told me that his older brother was the big reader in the family, but Luke became the family writer. Luke Ryan is our first veteran poet keynote speaker. He represents his generation with an eloquence and his presentation with language and style that surely captures what he sees every day and we see every day on television, read in newspapers, magazines, and on the internet. Luke shares that he was strongly influenced by his father through his love of literature, storytelling, and movies. Luke's mother and father currently serve mission work in Burma and in Thailand. Luke was also impressed with the poetry of Rupert Brooke, a World War I British poet. He mentioned that through Luke's research while studying at USF here in Tampa Bay, that there were actually more World War I poets than during World War II. It's an interesting acknowledgement. Luke is a creative, insightful, observant man whose poetry and his writings give a modern yet classic expression exploring the nature of violence, war, and the contrast between evil and courage found on the battlefield. Luke defers to Shakespeare's Henry V with the quote, "For he today that shed his blood with me shall be my brother." Luke also shares General George Patton's thought that if everyone is thinking alike, then somebody isn't thinking. His poem, named Pack and Unpack, Luke writes, "There's no time for reflection or grief on the battlefield, but when you get home, you need to find the time to unpack everything going on under the surface." Another Luke Bryan quote, "Grief, push it down, past your eyes that fill with blood, past your own revolving heart. You must fight for the living." Luke's commitment to sharing his basic thoughts includes that a lot of veterans have this question rumbling around in their heads. They think, have I done all I'm going to do? Did I already finish things that will matter most in my life? Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our keynote speaker, our veteran poet, Army Sergeant Luke Ryan.
It was early October in 2013, the middle of the night. It was my fourth and final deployment to Afghanistan. I was a U.S. Army Ranger with 3rd Ranger Battalion in the 75th Ranger Regiment. I was a team leader at the time, and we were after a Taliban HVT, a high-value target. And we found ourselves in a bad way that night. Long story short, what had happened is that the Taliban had set up what was essentially a minefield. It was a bunch of pressure plate IEDs, which are basically bombs, and they were buried under the ground, but they weren't plugged in to a battery yet, so they were pretty much inactive. And we were running around on top of it all, and once we had surrounded the building, they plugged it in. So we found ourselves in the middle of what was essentially a minefield. It was a long and complicated mission, but at one point, myself and my team were lured into an additional secondary ambush point. And while we were there, our military working dog, whose name was Yanni, was killed in action. He took an IED, took an explosion about 10 feet in front of me, directly dying and saving the lives of myself and the guys who were standing next to me. And then when we got back to the primary ambush point, I mean, it was fire and brimstone kind of stuff, multiple explosions going off in the matter of minutes. Depending on who you ask, they'll tell you how different number, but people say around 12 to 13 explosions. These IEDs, they're sort of a signature of modern warfare these days. When they hit you, they overpressure. The pressure passes through you, rattles your rib cage, rattles your head a little bit. They're hot. They feel like anything else that's hot. Opening the oven, campfire, except for combine that with something smacking you in the face. I remember in that night with all of those explosions going off all around us, our medic Brian was just moving casualty to casualty, treating guy after guy. You know, I don't want to say he was moving fearlessly, but you know, we were all scared, but it didn't affect him. Nobody broke down that night. Everybody did their jobs. Our EOD technician, who was like our bomb guy, he was clearing, his name is Jeff Dawson. He was clearing a path from man to man to try to get them out. These IEDs were particularly difficult to detect, so even once a path was cleared, no step was certain, and some guys weren't so lucky. I carried a guy, our dog handler, out. His name is Josh Hargis. He was the one who made the decision to let Yanni chase the one guy in the secondary ambush point, and that action saved my life and the life of the other guys next to me. And then later, when we got back to the primary place, he stepped on an IED, and he was a double amputee. So there I am, 23 years old, carrying him out. Headed back to the back of the MH-47 helicopter. It's like a tandem rotor, two-rotor Chinook. And we get back in the back of the helicopter, and there's an image there that has stuck in my head ever since. So I'm not sure if this has been a common thing for veterans over the years, but now a lot of guys will take an American flag and they'll roll it up and they'll put it on their back. And so when they're done with in their military careers, they finish their deployments, they'll take it, they'll hang it up on the wall, and they can look at it, and they can say, remind them of all their deployments. They carried it on every mission, on every deployment. And that night, everyone on the ground was either wounded or dead. Every single person on the ground. And we ran out of stretchers, or we ran out of litters, which are like basically fold-up stretchers. So guys were taking off the American flag off their back and using those to pick up the rest of what we could of the guys that didn't make it, of what we could find anyway. So I have this image in the back of my mind that's sort of been branded there, of looking in the back of the helicopter under the dim light, and medics working on the wounded guys strapped down in the back there, of guys who I knew with just, these are iron men, really, really shaken. And blood, bandages, dim light, and American flags in the back of the helicopter. All torn up. Flags, people, everybody torn up. Of the three team leaders that went on the ground that night, I was the only one that walked out on my own 2 feet. We had severely wounded left and right. We had amputees. We had severe facial trauma, loss of eyesight. We had a guy with 1,000 pieces of shrapnel up his right leg. And we wound up having 4 who were killed in action: Cody Patterson, Jenny Moreno, Joe Peters, and Patrick Hawkins. Cody Patterson was like he was a little bit of a newer junior ranger to the platoon. He was a really good guy. He was like a little brother, like to any of the leaders. He was like a little brother to us. It was our job to take care of him. He kind of reminded me of myself. He wasn't like a super army type person, but when he got there, he strived to just something had to get done. He was going to be the one to do it as best he could. He liked weird music. I like weird music. He's just a really good guy. Jenny Moreno was a CST, cultural sport team. She was part of the female special operations unit, and they attached one of them to our platoons every deployment, and she was with us that deployment. She was actually, before she went on to CST, she was a nurse by trade. So she saw casualties on the ground. She was a nurse by trade. I'm going to help them. And she was killed attempting to render aid to my brothers in arms who were wounded on the ground. And the guy who went with her was Joe Peters, who was also killed. He was a CID special agent. I had worked with him on that deployment a little bit, and my job on missions was similar to his job after we would hit a target, and his just the type of guy that, like, if something you have your responsibilities, and then you have the things that are outside your responsibility. But if he could do it and it would help, he would do it, even if it wasn't his problem technically. And then there was Sergeant Patrick Hawkins, who was my best friend. He was my fellow team leader. Pat, as we called him. You know, we came into Ranger Battalion together. We were young Rangers together, getting smoked as new privates together. We were, you know, we went off to Ranger School around the same time and came back. We were roommates for several years. We turned into junior leaders together, and we had very different styles of leadership, and we always bounced that off each other. You know, and we were roommates up until he got married. You know, I had never been on a mission without him. I've been on about over 100 missions with Ranger Battalion, and every single one of them was with him, and all of his missions were with me. And I never would. Less than 24 hours after that mission was over, I was asked to escort his remains back to the United States, back to his wife, and back to his parents. And that was a great honor. As soon as I made sure that my team was taken care of, I accepted it. And I remember sitting on that C-17, the plane flying over the Atlantic, coming home, and looking at the caskets, the 4 caskets in the plane with us, wrapped tightly in American flags. And I remember thinking, I mean, I was kind of dreading the 21 gun salutes, the folded flags, the tears, all the memorials and funerals, but more than that, I was dreading what came after that. I mean, what comes after that? You know, I already knew I was getting out, so am I going to go to college, get to class on time, pay my taxes, you know, spill coffee, like drive to work in a cubicle? What am I going to do after that? Like, it just seemed really empty. But as we landed on the airfield in Dover, you know, it dawned on me that there was a whole lot coming my way, and that I needed to appreciate it, understand it, and move toward it. And whatever my brain was doing at the time, I mean, physically and just emotionally, I was kind of a wreck. But my legs, as they always do, they knew what to do. They just stood me up and walked me out the door, and they walked me toward all sorts of things that, you know, an education that I really enjoyed getting, exploring the beautiful America, you know, hiking all from the West Coast to the East Coast, meeting my nieces that weren't born at the time, beautiful, amazing little girls, seeing my parents again, seeing my brother and his wife again, hanging out with my Ranger buddies after the fact, going hiking or hanging out, just going to a bar together, and meeting my awesome and beautiful girlfriend, Kenna, falling in love. Like I said, everyone who was on the ground that night on my last mission was wounded. Some died of their wounds and some didn't. And I consider myself, I was very lucky. I was really, really lucky. And I definitely understand that. You know, I struggle with it sometimes. Struggled with it more before, less now. I initially didn't want Purple Heart. Tried to turn it down. Didn't work out that way. You know, I saw like the Purple Heart as a lot of my medals at the time that I didn't really get it. To me, they seemed like hollow, just bits of metal, you know, a pat on the back from someone who wasn't there. But you know, over the years, I came to think about it more and more and more. And like I said, a lot of the guys on that ground, you know, some of them lost their limbs, some of them lost their eyesight functionality of certain parts of their body, some of them lost their lives. You know, they gave up a part of their body, or literally they gave up everything. And there's nothing that a person or a military organization or an entire country can do to actually repay that. You can't give them those things back. But what we can do, there is something that we can do with what we have. And to me, that does make sense. And to me, the Purple Heart, it's a gesture of gratitude. It shows an understanding to a certain degree of what was given. It's an understanding that we are physical creatures and that there is no greater physical thing that we can give than our physical selves. And for other people to understand and recognize that means a lot to me, especially for the guys who gave up so much more than I gave up. And this Purple Heart Day, we remember those wounded or killed in action. You know, in that spirit, I am humbled to be the one who's speaking to everybody here today, because so many of you have given up a lot more than I ever will. But it means a lot to me that I've been asked to come here and to share my story. I'd like to write a poem that I wrote. It's from the perspective of death. He's speaking to a soldier who he's taking off the battlefield. And I wrote it with, Patrick Hawkins was one of my best friends, but I wrote it with Cody Patterson in mind, just a young guy getting started in his ranger career, really talented, solid ranger. So this is from the perspective of death. It's called The Hooded Figure. Hello, I'm here to take you away. Do you see that field, those mountains, the clouds that hang above? We will go beyond those things. Your cheeks are red, redder than I imagined when I would receive the word to take you over the river. When I see you, I see a train I visited a long time ago to take many men, women, and children. The train was a spectacle. It had been constructed with devotion, admired with wonder and awe. It powered forward on its maiden voyage on the crest of steaming to faraway places, to drink in the sights of your green and blue wonder. But the train slipped the moment it reached its cruising speed, derailed only moments after leaving the station. Tragedy is my business, and business is always booming. But I am an infinite being, and alongside my infinite devotion for crossing the river, I hold an infinite sorrow in the place that you call your heart. And I lament the future that has been painted in crimson on the wall behind you. Yes, you may weep. Weep, for you are a better man. You are a better man than those who will remain in this place for 100 years. Weep, for your dreams sprang and shone like a pure spring, and they were stolen from you. Weep, for you never found the love you sought. You never saw the children you wished so dearly to hold, and you never had the privilege of wrinkles on your face, though I can see that you have miles on your shoes. It's okay. You may let go of your rifle. Here, take my staff if you must grasp something. Fear not. This place is but a warm breath in the winter winds, and we will carry onward. There is a cabin that I know of, with a warm fire and a soft pillow, and we will go there together and wait for the others. Thank you.
The Disabled American Veterans and Auxiliary Clearwater 11 are so privileged to be able to participate in this ceremony. We just wanted to put this award into perspective for you by sharing a few numbers. President George Washington created this badge in 1782. Since that time, 1.8 million Purple Hearts have been distributed and earned by very big heroes. 3 were received and earned during the Revolutionary War, 320,000 in World War I, and 1 million in World War II. The first woman to receive a Purple Heart was Nurse Beatrice Mary McDonald in World War I, and John F. Kennedy was the only United States president to earn a Purple Heart. Thank you for being here today.
Okay. We'd like to read you a poem. It's called A Hero with a Purple Heart. They say the war has long been over, but yet I live it every day. The smell of gunpowder still filters through my nose, while the sound of gunshots still leave a ring in my ears. The sound of explosions I still hear as if it was yesterday. The sound of fireworks make me want to run and hide in the nearest place. The screams of men wounded and killed rode through my mind like an unforgettable slideshow, leaving my heart pounding with paranoia due to the memories that haunt me inside. Every day I'm living the war, even though they say it's been over for a long time. Every day they call people like me a hero with a purple heart. Although there is a big price to pay carrying a heart that has been affected by the war. Every day I think that myself or the people I love are going to get shot. Every day I suffer from flashbacks resulting from what doesn't exist anymore. The doctors called it shell shock. I call it a taste of hell that altered my soul. The world, I'll always remain a hero with a purple heart. To myself, I'll still be fighting the Vietnam War that was over years ago.
Next on the agenda is the order of Pinellas County Sheriff's Office Honor Guard with a rifle salute. There will be 3 shots fired, so please be aware. Following that, the Pasco County Sheriff's Office Honor Guard will be playing taps. And then Dunedin Pipe Band Director Ian Donaldson will play Amazing Grace.
Please rise. Please be seated. I'd like to thank Pat. Thank you, Pat, and the DAVA, Clearwater Chapter 11, also the DAV, Pinellas and Pasco County Sheriff's Office, and our own piping director, Ian Donaldson, for Amazing Grace. Thank you. Now I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank those who assisted with this evening's program. We have our committee, Purple Heart Committee. We meet 4 to 5 times a year. Everybody that attends these meetings brings something to the table. You've heard a lot of them speak this evening, and if they hadn't speak, they helped with organizing and bringing speakers in. So I'd like our committee members to stand. Mal Klingen, Lori Batters, and I do want to thank Lori. She's the one that recommended Luke Ryan to be our keynote speaker and assisted him in coming here from New York City. So thank you, Lori. Mark Brill, Sid Damsgard, Scott Daniels, Captain James Fasinelli, Dunedin High School, Pat Miles, Tamara Reeves, a new member of the committee with Dunedin High School, Junior ROTC, BJ Starr, Shirley Kirkland, and Lieutenant Rob Turner. And this group of committee members represents the Pinellas County and Pasco County Sheriff's Office, American Legion, VFW, DAV Clearwater Unit 11, Dunedin High School, and the Military Order of the Purple Heart, as well as the City of Dunedin's employees and staff. I would like to recognize also our Parks Division for taking care of this park every day, our downtown crew. And I'd like to mention Pete McNeves, our crew leader, Chris Wiley, and Seth Lyons, our park maintenance staff. And also Rich Lopez is here from Public Service this evening. So thank you for all you do for our parks and for this particular Purple Heart Park. I'd also like to give special thanks to Jory Peterson. Jory, where are you? Jory, Terry Trudell, Briggs Noun, and Monica Warble all work together with the committee to bring you this program each year. There's also a member of the committee that's not here today, but I do want to recognize her. Carol Karp has been one of our senior administrative assistants for the Parks and Recreation Department for the last 12 years, has brought this committee together, schedules the meetings, writes the minutes, writes the notes, sends all the communications out, and I know that several of our Military Order of the Purple Heart members were at her retirement party this past week. So thank you for being there for Carol. And Carol's now retired and just went on a trip, about a 2-month trip to Michigan. So I did want to recognize her. Now I'd like to bring up Mel Klingen, who will talk about the Quilts of Valor Foundation. Mel?
Well, first off, I'd like to thank the Army for taking care of our flag. Thank you, Rob. It's a new pole, if you couldn't tell. Thanks, everybody, for being here today. It's a great venue, and it's cooled off, so I'll be brief. But, of course, I'd like to thank everybody. At this time, though, we would like to honor 6 Purple Heart recipients with Quilts of Valor. So I would like to call your name and have you come up to the front, please. Captain Robert, we call him Father Bob Swick, Marine Corps. Sergeant Harold Kemetz, Army. Can you go over there in front? No. Corporal Mike Vielle, Marine Corps. Gunny Sergeant Thurnell Chip Shields, Marine Corps. Ed Formosa, Army. Mike Jones, Marine Corps, but Mike got stuck up north and didn't make it, so we will award his at a later date. The Quilts of Valor Foundation was started by one mother who was worried about her son being deployed to Iraq post 9/11. In her words, knowing that I was 10 seconds from panic while he was deployed, I had this vision at 2 in the morning of a warrior struggling with his war demons. I saw him sitting on the side of the bed, wrapped in a quilt. That quilt not only comforted him, but warded off his demons. She acted on that vision and presented the very first quilt at Walter Reed Medical Center, November 2003. From there, the Quilts of Valor Foundation continues the dedication of covering all veterans and service members who have been touched by war with a quilt of comfort and healing. The Quilts of Valor have presented 250,000 quilts, and today we're going to add to that roster. These quilts come with a three-part message. First, we honor you for your service because you stood the watch. We were able to sleep knowing we were protected. Second, we know that freedom is not free, and these quilts say, thank you for your sacrifice. Third, these quilts are meant to offer comfort. We consider it a privilege to honor you, as we may never know the extent of your sacrifice and service to protect and defend the United States of America. Ladies, please honor your veterans with their quilt. And veterans, patriots, would you please turn around? Quilters say that every quilt tells us, hi neighbor, tells a story. The story of these quilts began here in Florida by those who share your love of country. On each quilt is a label which tells you about this quilt's beginning. As of today, that story continues with you. We hope you will keep it with you as a tangible reminder that no matter where you served, you are on our minds, in our hearts, and never been forgotten. Thank you. You may sit down. I almost did it. I would also like at this time to announce the names of 7 more veterans who will be receiving their Quilt of Valor at the conclusion of this event in front of the Quilts of Valor table, which is on the north end of the park here. Please join them if you can while they are being honored. As I say your name, will you please stand to be recognized? Specialist David Hahn, Army. Sergeant Bill Kopla, Air Force. Master Sergeant Mark Jordan, Army. Sergeant Chester Pyatt, Army. Chief Tamara Reeves, Navy. Captain James Fasinelli, Navy. Specialist Christopher Flynn, Army. Thank you.
Thank you, Mel, for that presentation. Just a few announcements before we close out the program this evening. We are selling bricks in honor of the Purple Heart recipients. At the table on the north side of the park, you'll see our Parks and Recreation staff. Also, Luke has his book of poems that are also at that table if you're interested. And of course, the bricks will be placed in front of the monument. As you can see, several hundreds of bricks are here at this time. In addition, we have a table representing the Honor Flight Network, a nonprofit organization created solely to honor American veterans for all of the sacrifices by transporting these heroes to Washington, D.C. to visit those memorials dedicated to honor the service and sacrifices of themselves, family, and their friends. I would also like to thank the local merchants who offer discounts to military personnel in their businesses. In addition, I would like to thank the following who assisted this evening: the Dunedin Chamber of Commerce, Dunedin Fire Department, paramedics, Pinellas County Sheriff's Office CPOs, and also the Cub Scouts Pac-10, Arrow of Light, and their parents for assisting with distributing of programs and water for our ceremony. Also, as you'll notice on the light poles, the random acts of flowers donated floral pieces for decorations throughout the park. Thank you all for being here this evening, and to close out the program, I'm going to ask Chip Shields to come back up to the podium. Chip is a Marine Gunnery Sergeant, retired, and also a Purple Heart recipient, and he's going to close out the program by singing God Bless the USA.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans bright with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. Thank you.
Honor Guard, retire the colors.